Hare Krishna and welcome all the devotees to the level 2 Bhagavadgita classes from ISKCON Mangaluru. So today we'll be looking at the other part of Dhyana Yoga. So we started the chapter 6 last week, right? And then we actually saw the Ashtanga Yoga, right? So wherein Lord Krishna actually gives how one has to do the Ashtanga Yoga, right? So, what is just Ashtanga Yoga, right? So, there are different stages of Ashtanga Yoga, right? So, we saw that, and then we saw the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, right? And the initial stages is called Yoga Ruda, right? And then right, uh, the advanced stage, right? It's called Yoga Ruruksha. Or did I jumble it actually? Yeah. Yoga Ruruksha is beginning stage and advanced stage is Yoga Ruda. Okay. And then he actually explained different things, right? Say like mind. So mind is the best friend, right? And then enemy also. So if you can control it, so it will become as your friend, or else it is enemy. And then we saw the 6 enemies of mind also, right? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mada, Moha, Matsarya, right? So those are the 6. And then, so controlling the mind is very important. And then we did see that what modern day yoga teaches, right? And the other aspect is Lord Krishna actually tells us how to practice yoga, right? So yoga has to be practiced uh, ekaki, in the sense, say one has to be alone, right? And then in a secluded place. Okay. So one has to be in a secluded place. And we saw that say he should have a proper seating posture, right? And then say he should have a deer skin, right? The seat shouldn't be high, low. Yeah, it should be a forest, right? So all those things we saw, right? And after that, we saw that if to do yoga, neither we should over endeavor, or in the sense we should not overeat, right? Or eat less, right? So everything should be balanced. Neither if somebody is sleeping more or sleeping less also, right, he is not fit to do yoga. And then everything should be regulated, right? So the eating habits, the sleeping habits, recreation, everything, right? So this was the last verse which we touched base, right? It was 17th verse which we saw. Yukta ahara viharasya, yukta chetasya karmasu, yukta sapno bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha, right? So this was the last verse which we saw. So wherein, so we'll have to actually have an habit, okay? So wherein we'll have to regulate our eating styles and everything. So now the perfectional stage of a yogi, right? So now the Lord actually will go into the what is the criteria for becoming the perfect yoga, right? So one thing is the mental activity should be disciplined, right? He should be situated in transcendence, right? In samadhi, and then he should be free from all material desires. Okay. So we'll look further today into those things, and then these things we covered, right? So next thing is, so he's explaining. Okay. So as a lamp in a windless place, do not waver, right? So if you look in it, so the lamp is stand still if there is no wind, right? So the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendental self. Okay. So our mind also should be like that. Okay, so it shouldn't actually wave. Okay, so it should be very steady. Okay, so that's the analogy. Analogy for a perfect yogi is just like a lamp is in a windless place. Let similarly, steady mind in samadhi does not waver. Okay, so that's one pointed focus, and then it should not waver for material senses, right? Okay, so basically in this example, steady mind is samadhi, and then this wind is compared to the sense enjoyment or the material desires. Okay, and then further, right? Um, he actually tells that. So, what is more perfection, right? So, he says that he thereby relishes boundless transcendental happiness by directly experiencing soul and super soul within the heart. So, he can see both soul and super soul within his heart, and then he relishes the pleasure. Okay, and then we actually saw that the Paramatma is in our heart, right? So, and with Shank, right? With Shankh, Chakra, Pada, Gada, and Padma, right? So, he is there. Okay, he's residing in our heart, right? And knowing this, he escapes all miseries arising from material contact. So, because he's totally focused, and then he is getting guidance also from Paramatma, right? So, in that stage, so wherein he has complete trance, and then he's able to talk also, right? So, in that way, in the sense, he's able to connect everything to the Lord. Yeah. So, thinking that there is no greater joy than this, his focus never departs from within, even amidst greatest difficulties. Even there are greatest difficulties, right? So, the external difficulties, he is very happy because he's actually enjoying internally the bliss. Yeah. So this is actually primary characteristics of a yoga. Of yoga principle is what? By practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. Okay, and so basically, once we do this, right? So then one becomes situated in trance or samadhi. So when we have less material detachment, less material requirements, and then we are detached, right? So then we actually increase our proportion to the spiritual connection, right? So that is samadhi, right? So once, if somebody is already in the trance, right? So he never actually gets shaken. So the example of wavering of wind, right? So that doesn't happen to him. Okay. So these are basically the things which have been engaged. So one should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not deviate from the path. One should abandon without expectation all material desires born of mental speculations and thus control all the senses on all sides by mind. So, this is how you should practice yoga with great determination. Yeah? So, you should have utsaha. Without that, we can't do anything. Okay. So, here in Prabhupada actually for determination, right, he gives an example. Okay. So, in the purport, right? So there is a small story. Okay, so wherein what happens is there is a small bird. Okay, small bird which actually lays. Okay, a sparrow who actually lost her eggs in the waves of ocean. Okay, so the waves of ocean came in and then they took away the eggs of the sparrow which was laid on the shore. Okay, so the sparrow become very upset. So looking at this thing, right? And then it asks the ocean to actually return her eggs. Okay. So the ocean, because there's a small creature, right? So the ocean didn't consider itself. So they said that, okay, nothing doing. So he was like deaf. Okay. And then the sparrow actually felt very bad, right? And then it decided that I'll somehow dry up this ocean. Okay. And then what she did is with her, whatever with her small beak, right? She, whatever her capacity was, she was actually trying to take water from the ocean and then throwing away. So everyone started laughing, looking at this. But what happened is this news actually went to Garuda. So because it's a gigantic bird, right? So of Lord Vishnu is the Vishnu's carrier, very powerful. So then it actually came for the rescue of the sister bird, and then it asked, because Garuda came and saw, and then he saw the kind of determination the small bird has in, right? So he was very happy, and so he actually asked the ocean, saying that, say, return her eggs, because now the ocean sees that it's Garuda, so anything can happen, right? So then the ocean actually returns her eggs. Okay, so this is what the practice of yoga, right? So may appear very difficult job. Yeah. So even bhakti yoga, but we'll have to follow through the process with determination, right? So there will be problems, okay, and then there will be hiccups, but we'll have to overcome that. Then only so we can actually move ahead. Yeah? So and then the Lord actually says that with proper conviction and intelligence, right? So one actually seizes the senses. Okay. So gradually, step by step, one becomes situated in trance by means of intelligence. So if you have uh, full determination in yoga practice, right, and then you're doing yoga, sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should not think of anything else. So it should only think one pointed focus. Then something can happen, right? From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature. So the mind is compared to a monkey. Okay. A monkey is very turbulent, right? So it cannot sit in a place. So similarly, the mind is also very unsteady. So, and then if it goes for some sense enjoyment, then you'll have to bring it back. Okay. And then bring it back under the control of the self. Okay. So the yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental knowledge, happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all relations to past deeds. So, who is fixed, right? So, the Lord says, right? Though the yogi whose mind is fixed on me, okay, so on the Lord, okay, on who is nothing but Lord Krishna here, verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. Okay. The self-controlled yogi constantly engaged in yoga practice becomes free from all material contaminations and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. Okay. So if one does yoga in this way, then he feels the companion of the Lord. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. So this is Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. We saw in, right? In chapter 4, we saw that a learned man sees the soul in every living entity, right? So he doesn't actually look for caste, creed, or an position, right? Higher position, lower position, nothing. So for him, a dog eater or a brahmana is same, an elephant is same, an ant is same, right? So same thing here also. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. Okay. So the 31 and 32, we'll see here. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in my, I am never lost, nor is he lost to me. Okay. So it is again reciprocation. Okay. So if somebody sees the Lord, then the Lord also will reciprocate. Yeah. Such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the super soul, knowing that I and the super soul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances. Okay. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their desire. So he's equipoised, right? So he's neither happy nor morose for anything. Okay. So, and then he doesn't compare himself with the other materialistic people, right? So this is how the yoga practice has to be done. Okay. So now we will see this section is very interesting. So after listening all these instructions from Lord Krishna, right, how to meditate, and then how to have, what is the perfect yogi, right? How does he practice, and then what kind of knowledge he should have, and then what kind of detachment he should have. So after going through all these series of instructions from Lord Krishna, right? So now Arjuna asks, so he heard almost 33 verses, right? And then now he says that this is not possible. So in that age, so when Arjuna was a mighty warrior, right? And then he had all the opulences, and then he was much more better than what we are. Okay, so we are nowhere comparison to Arjuna, right? So Arjuna had everything, right? Arjuna was so focused. We saw that the way he hit the eye of the fish, right? So he was a valiant warrior. So for him, practicing yoga would have been possible. And then his life, and he lived for long years, right? Then he says that he himself says that this is not possible. This is not practical, Krishna. Okay. So we'll see. Those are the next verses, right? So he could actually see in the shadow of the bird's eye, or and then he could actually hit, right? So he was such a great warrior, and then he had so much of concentration and everything. So he himself says that this is not possible. We'll see in that verse. Okay. So he says, Arjuna says, "O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical, right? And unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady." So he says that it's not possible. Okay. Say, I can't actually do this. The mind is restless, and so doing this thing is very, very difficult. So he says at that time itself, he says that it's not possible. Okay. So one thing was he was a great warrior. He had a long years to live, and then he was so focused, and then he was even friend of Krishna, but he couldn't. So compared to us in Kali Yuga, right? So our struggle is of short duration. So we can't concentrate reading a book for more than 10 minutes. That's it, right? And then our duration of life is very small, right? And then nobody is interested in self-realization, right? So in this day and age, we can not think of this in any way, right? So the only yoga system which prevails is for good health or some good breathing exercises, yeah, but not the one which actually connects to the Lord. So now he says, you see, even Arjuna says this. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadrunam tashyam nigraham manye vayuriva shuddhashkramam. So he says that the mind is very fast, chanchalam, yeah, and then controlling it is very difficult. He says that it is easy to control the wind. So the mind actually is traveling more faster than the wind, is what Arjuna says. Okay, he says it's very difficult to actually control the mind. Yeah? The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, right, and very strong. Oh Krishna, and to subdue it, I think it's more difficult than controlling the wind. Okay, so Arjuna says these things. Yeah, so he says that it is very difficult. Yeah, so this is what we saw. He says that it is very fast. Yeah, so basically, this is the analogy which is being given in the purport, which Prabhupada writes in, right? Basically, the senses are nothing but these 5 horses. Okay, and then the soul is the passenger. Okay, the chariot is the body, right? And then mind is these ropes which actually control the horses and intelligence. So the actual thing is here, the intelligence actually should control it, all the senses. Okay, if at all the senses are agitating, right, so then, and the horses are not listening to the driver, okay, then what happens? You lose the control, right? And then the chances are that you'll go into a wrong direction. Yeah, so we should have such a strong mind, right? So by the practice of yoga, right? But it is not practical in this particular day and age. Okay, so now we'll see what actually uh, the Lord says in. Okay, and then for us, right, so we have seen the easiest way is actually as Lord Chaitanya has given us, right? So to do the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Japa. So that's the best thing. Yeah? And the next slide, right? The Lord actually answers how we can actually control the mind. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Asamshayam Mahabhavo Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha Grihiyate. So he says that it is possible, but through practice. Okay. So we'll have to practice, and then what do we have to practice? We'll have to practice devotional service, right? And then we'll have to give away. So we'll have to have the vairagya, right? To the material attachment. Lord Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind. He even acknowledges that it is very difficult, yeah. But it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So the Lord says that it is possible. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll read this purport. Yeah. So this is a nice purport. Yeah. So I'll share. Any of the Matajis can read in. Yeah. So this is Lord's answer. Yeah. Can someone read the purport? Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, can I read?
Go ahead, Mataji.
Yeah. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind, as expressed by Arjuna, is accepted by the personality of Godhead. But at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulations of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and foremost of such consciousness, however, one enga- the first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn Vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind and spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. This is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. This attachment is called Pareshanubhava, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. The more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfaction and strength. Similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from the material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind, and eating the foodstuffs offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So here you saw, right, what the Lord is saying, right? So first thing is focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the sense and mind, observing celibacy. So everything should be regulated, right? And then, so if we do practice, right? So these are the Navavida Bhaktis which we saw in, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, right? So if we pick them, right? So, and in that, even Prabhupada says that hearing about Krishna is the important. Shravanam, even Lord Krishna also will stress this word. Okay. So if we do proper Shravanam, right, everything will come in line. Okay. So once we do Shravanam and then we get enlightened and then we are getting closer towards Krishna, then you'll slowly get the detachment. So you might have observed in your personal experience also, right? So if you're when you're chanting, right? So whatever rounds you're chanting, so you'll be feeling so very calm and composed. And the other thing is even your lifestyle, right? So it's not the way it used to be earlier. Okay. So there is a difference we'll find in. Right. First thing is you'll have some discipline. Okay. So earlier the discipline might not be there, but you'll get yourself disciplined. Yeah. So the first attribute which you'll get is you'll actually be disciplined. Yeah. So these are the 9 types of devotional service we actually spoke through, right? So instead of actually, so this is how the solution to control the mind. Okay. So this is possible. How we'll have to do the devotional service, right? So that is through practice. So devotional service. Now we are doing sadhana, and then slowly we'll actually have to increase our bhakti, right? And then we'll have to do vairagya from other things. Yeah. So devotional service is compared to curing disease by the process called Krishna consciousness, right? Expert treatment for the mad mind is nothing but hearing the glories of the Lord. Yeah? So that's the way. So it is like, for example, right? So to nourish our body, right? So if we eat, then the body gets nourishes, right? Similarly, if we have to actually get attachment to the Lord, right? So we'll have to hear more. Okay, so that is the food, right? Shravanam is the food for our bhakti. Okay. And then he says that trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite fire while pouring water on it. Okay. So if you are actually trying to practice yoga, right, and then engaging, so there are a lot of shops. What happens is they actually teach yoga, right, and once they are out of that, right, so they indulge in all sense gratificatory things. Yeah. So in that, right, so that yoga system is nothing but one side you're lighting the fire, another side you're pouring water. So nothing is going to happen, right? So if your mind is not controlled, right, it is waste of time. Yeah. This is very important. Yeah. So you might be seeing that there are a lot of yoga clubs wherein both the things go in hand, which is not correct. So now the next question. Yeah. So Arjuna says that okay, until now it is fine. He says that what happens if we are midway, right? So neither we are in transcendental position, right? So wherein we are in spiritual world or we are getting connected there, nor we are able to enjoy the material life. So what is his condition? If somebody is in between, right, what happens? So saying that you couldn't actually, you started yoga, but you couldn't do properly, right? So you couldn't actually reach the transcendental way, or you are putting your footsteps towards the spiritual world, and midway you couldn't attend, right? So somewhere you got dragged off, or you practiced for long and at the end you couldn't actually reach to the destination. So what happens, right? So this is the question he asks. So one thing is clear. So who is completely transcendental, right? So who is actually liberated? For him, there is no issue. And then who is enjoying the material world with atheism, so without fearing for God, or there is no God and all, right? He is also enjoying. But there are a lot of people in between, right? So who are actually not belonging to this place or not belonging to that place, and then few have done some austerity, some have done some work, right? So they have done some yoga and then they have done some bhakti yoga, but they have not reached the destination. So what is their story, right? So what happens to the unsuccessful transcendentalist? Okay. Although he begins the process of self-realization with faith, he later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism. So this is Saubhari Muni. Okay. You see, Saubhari Muni actually was doing tapasya. He was doing tapasya underwater. Yeah. And then we know that he got agitated by seeing two fishes mating, right? And then he came out and then he went to the king and he married 50 daughters of his. Okay. And he was enjoying material life. So after some passing couple of hundreds of years, right, he felt that what am I doing, right? So, but he had a chance because he had so many years to live in, and then he was a very elevated person, right? So again, he utilized his rest of the life again going into transcendence, and then say he practiced spirituality and then he went back. So, but that's not possible for all. Yeah? So this is what he says. If there is any small cloud, right? So what will happen? So if it is attached to this, right, it can go, or it attaches to this, it will go. But We're not getting attached to any of them, right? So it will become like a raven cloud, right? Detached cloud. So he says, O mighty Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success? So, and perish like a raven cloud with no position in any sphere. So the raven cloud doesn't have a position. So Arjuna asks, this is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. He says that no one else can destroy this except you. So you only tell the solution, what happens. Okay. So now the Lord replies back, and then he says that what happens there. Yeah? So he says that here it is, right? So this is the Revan cloud. So there are two ways, right? Either you enjoy materialist or transcendentalist. Somewhere you have in between, then what happens, right? The subsequent verses we'll actually see through what happens. Okay. So the personality of Godhead said, O son of Partha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction. Okay. So this particular scene you're seeing, right? So this is Ajamila. Okay. And then these are Yamadutas, and here it is Vishnudutas. Okay. Either in the world or in the spiritual world, one who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. So he says that anyone who is doing an auspicious thing, right? So then for him, there is no problem. Okay. So even we saw in second chapter, right? So where Lord says that Neha Bikramana Shosti, right? So if you actually do a small endeavor in the spiritual life, right? So then the same thing actually continues in the next life, right? So like if you have taken 4 steps, then you'll start from fifth step. But material life, it is not, right? So what happens is you'll actually get birth in a pious family, right? So the unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocrats. Okay, so this is what it will happen. Okay, the unsuccessful yogi. Okay, so if he goes to the heavenly planets, right, and then if he's not practicing properly, so he'll get into a family of rich aristocrat. Okay, after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family. So if it is after long practice, if he has done right, so he'll actually take birth in a family where they are already practicing the Krishna consciousness, right? Or uh, they are actually spiritual. So they'll be born to a parents who are actually in the bhakti, right? So who are already doing bhakti, then basically they'll be the children of the devotees, and then they'll right from their childhood, right? So they'll get the access to do bhakti, and then they'll start in. So those are very rare. So here, this particular picture is of Srila Prabhupada itself. So where his father actually gave him the platform. So at a very young age, right? So at his childhood only, so he used to build a small ratha and then give it to Prabhupada, right? So Prabhupada at his small age itself, he used to have his own ratha yatra. So in his community, right? On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Puru. So this is what it will happen. Okay. So if we are unsuccessful, then we'll actually get a good life. Okay. So wherein say we'll get another chance where we can actually practice bhakti and then go back. Yeah. So, by virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principle. So, because these children, if you see, right, so they have done a lot of pious activities in their life. There are few things which are left over. So, they take birth and then they complete these activities and then they go back. You see, such a tender age, right? So, at that age itself, they are so much inclined towards bhakti. It's not possible, right? So, if it is not there internally, right, it's not possible to cultivate at that age, right? And when the yogis engage himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal. So that's there. Yeah. So this is what revives yoga practice for whoever they left off, right? So these are all the things, right? Unsuccessful yogis, they'll actually get, who falls down after long practice, they'll get uh, into a devotee family, right? Fate of unsuccessful yogi who falls after short practice, right? Enjoys on heavenly planets for many years and then he has to come back because his agenda was to actually enjoy the heavenly planets. Okay. So now we'll actually see a yogi, right, is greater than the ascetic, right? And then he's even greater than the empiricist and greater than purity worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. So that's what the Lord says in, yeah. So actually, we'll read this purport. So this is also very nice purport. So last two, right, are very nice. So wherein the Lord gives a prelude to the next chapter. Okay. So the next chapter is nothing but bhakti. So now he says that a yogi is greater than the ascetic, right? Ascetic are nothing but the posters one, right? So which is not like they actually tend to show something, but they are not. Yeah. When we speak of yoga, we refer to linking our consciousness with supreme absolute truth. So that is the actual yoga. Okay. So such a process is named differently by various practitioners in terms of particular method they adopted. So what he is saying is, if we are linking, so if we are actually looking for purative activities, right, then it will become karma yoga, right? And if we are looking for philosophy, right, so then it becomes jnana yoga. And when it is dominantly, so when it is towards the devotional service, right, then it becomes bhakti yoga, right? So when linking the process is predominantly in purative activities, it is called karma yoga. When it is predominantly empirical, it is called jnana yoga. And when it is predominantly in devotional relationship with Supreme Lord, it is called bhakti yoga. So bhakti yoga or Krishna consciousness is the ultimate perfection of all yogas. So here the Lord concludes saying that this is the ultimate one, which will be actually explained. So of all the yogis, right? So the bhakti yogis are the topmost, right? Or of all the yogas, bhakti yoga is the best one. The Lord has confirmed here in the superiority of yoga. So, but he has not mentioned that it is better than bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is full spiritual knowledge and therefore nothing can excel it, right? So asceticism without self knowledge is imperfect. So that is the problem, right? So it will become a show bottle, right? So empiric knowledge without surrender to the Supreme Lord is also imperfect. Okay. Only reading philosophy, right? So that will not help unless you actually surrender to the Lord. And purity work without the Lord, right, is waste of time. So that is for sense gratification, right? Therefore, the most highly praised form of yoga performance mentioned here is Bhakti Yoga. And this is still more clearly explained in the next verse. So, this is the verse which actually gives the prelude to the next chapter. So, now the Lord actually concludes. Okay. So, he says that Yoginam api sarvesham madgatantara atmanah shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo matah. So, he says that of all the yogis, right, whosoever, right, is actually thinking of me, mad gatantara atmanam, abiding in me, always thinking of me, right, within himself, right, and in full faith, who gives the transcendental service, right, he by me is the greatest yogi. Okay, so this is what the prelude for Bhakti Yoga, right? And of all yogis, the one who is the one with great faith, who always abides in me, okay, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. Okay. So these things we'll see in the next chapter also. The Lord will say that Manmana Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuro. Okay. So he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So the Lord actually established here that the of all the yogis, right? So Bhakti Yoga is the best one. Okay. Here actually Prabhupada actually writes a very big purport. Okay. So I think you should actually read this. Okay. So once you're into your BVs, right? But I'll read some highlights of this purport. Yeah? The culmination of all kinds of yoga practice lies in Bhakti Yoga. Okay. All other yogas are but means to come to the point of Bhakti Yoga. So whatever yoga practice we do in, right? So those are basically the progression we saw in, right? So first everything starts with the furtive activities, right? So wherein we want to enjoy, right? So then we go to the next stage, right? So wherein we do sakama karma yoga, right? So we do work and then we are not attached to the fruits, right? And then jnana, and then we saw ashtanga yoga, right? So ashtanga yoga, you'll actually focus on your super soul. So having all those things, you'll progress towards ashtanga yoga, and then from there you'll actually focus on the Lord, right? So wherein you'll be actually doing all the practice for the Lord. So that is Bhakti Yoga, right? So towards destiny, from the beginning of Karma Yoga to the end of Bhakti Yoga is long way of self-realization. Okay. Karma Yoga without purity results is the beginning of the path. So this is the starting path. When Karma Yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, this stage is called Jnana Yoga. So first it will start with Karma Yoga only. Then, so by practicing that, right, so you'll slowly increase the knowledge and then you'll feel that no, so this is not the right thing. And then you'll go into this Jnana Yoga. When Jnana Yoga increases in meditation on the super soul by different physical processes and the mind in on is on him, it is called Ashtanga Yoga. Okay. And when one surpasses the Ashtanga Yoga and comes to the point of the supremacy of God Krishna, it is called Bhakti Yoga. Right. So this is the culmination. So, and then this is the ultimate goal, is nothing but Bhakti Yoga. Right. So the yogi who's progressive is therefore on the true path of eternal good fortune. Okay. One who sticks to a particular point and does not make further progress is called by that particular name. So if one is stuck somewhere, right? So he is actually called in that yoga, right? So these things you can actually read in your BV. Yeah? So basically this particular verse has to be read. Yeah, this is very important. Yeah. So this is what, right? So if you are linking the process to Jnana, we just saw all these things, right? Yeah. So this is the conclusion of the sixth chapter, right? It all starts with Karma Yoga without putative results, right? Nishkama Karma Yoga. Then you'll have Jnana Yoga, so which is nothing but knowledge plus renunciation. It adds to Niskam Karma Yoga. And now with this baggage, it will go to the Jnana Yoga plus meditation is Ashtanga Yoga. And then this is, and we know, right? So in first stage is Brahman, then Paramatma, and then the Lord, right? So which is the absolute truth. So that is the ultimate goal of the Lord. Okay, so these are the progressive things. So how actually once we have attained bhakti, right? So Lord Krishna will deliver us from this material ocean and then he'll take us to the spiritual world. Okay. So that is a long way though, but yes, our idea should be that. So from next week onwards, I will actually come to the actual crux of Bhagavad Gita, which lies in chapter 7 to 12. Yeah. So chapter 7 to 12 is the actual crux of whole Bhagavad Gita, right? So we initially saw the example of jewel box, right? So the upper lid and lower lid, right, are first six chapters and last six chapters, but the actual jewel of Bhagavad Gita is the mid six chapters. Okay. So wherein the Lord actually will take us to the journey of Bhakti Yoga, right? So which is the ultimate thing. Yeah. So Hare Krishna will stop here. Yeah. So tomorrow we'll not have the class because I'm traveling to Vrindavan. And we'll be back on next Thursday. Probably next Friday also will not have. I'll actually um, give the information to Shubhra Mataji. Maybe we can have a class on next Saturday. So if possible, yeah. So if not, then we don't have class tomorrow and on next Friday. Okay. So basically, we are going for Vrindavan Yatra, which is starting from Sunday until Wednesday, and then Thursday we are flying back to our respective places. Yeah. So if at all you get any chance for association, so please enroll yourself, and then maybe this yatra you might not have enrolled, but try to actually enroll yourselves into the yatras wherein you can meet more devotees, right? And then especially if we are going to Vrindavan, right? So we'll actually have association with Prabhupada's disciples, right? And say in Vrindavan where we had Lord Krishna's pastimes, right? So we'll get some spiritual energy from there. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yes, Prabhuji. We can bring our kids also, Prabhuji. Yeah, if
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yes, Mataji. So, so hope you might have seen the itinerary and everything, right? So which comes in. Um, so we'll have to go through this. So the next, I think next trip is also fixed. So that's Dwarka, which is being arranged in the month of April, but the bookings are already closed now. Uh, uh, so that is there. So we will have, so every 6 months, right? So we have one trip, so which is planned ahead of time. The only thing is we'll have to book our tickets if they are far, right? And then because Vrindavan is far for South Indians, it is far, but people who are living in North India, for them it is a little bit near, right? So the logistics and everything has to be arranged. And stay tuned if there are any live videos or so, live recordings. If you get, maybe I believe you'll get some recordings from Vrindavan, so which you can actually listen through. Okay,
Yes, Hari Bol Prabhuji.
very well. And if there is anything which I can gain a knowledge from there, and then I'll come and I'll actually share those details. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, yes. Sure, Prabhuji. We'll wait for that.
Okay. So thank you for your association. We'll wind up for today's class. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namo. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.